Hi everyone, I am Tanya Janca, and today I want to talk to you about DevSecOps and how it's way more than just pipelines. It's so much more. And so let me explain a bit more. So basically, DevSecOps is our favorite industry buzzword right now. If you do AppSec, you're like, DevSecOps, you hear it all the time. Every company's like, buy our tool, put in your pipeline, then you're doing DevSecOps and all your dreams will come true. And like, let's be clear, it's still great, but there's lots of other places where you can automate. There's lots of other places where you can find more efficiency or do security better, but without having to put 400 tools in your pipeline. And so let's see what we can do. So the fact that DevOps is not just pipelines, DevSecOps, in my opinion, equals AppSec plus DevOps and even SecOps, right? Like we're trying to secure the containers, we're trying to secure the VMs, we're trying to secure all the APIs, all the software, everything. And so another thing we're going to talk about today is application security program goals. So let's say you made a program to help secure your software where you work, and you can do that. So you can do that work with DevOps outside the pipeline. So you can get tons of awesome things done. You can secure all the things, but you don't have to put everything in the pipeline. So we're going to talk about the opposite of what every other person talks about when they talk about DevOps and security. And we're going to talk about all your opportunities outside the pipeline to completely kick ass and take names at securing your software. So you're like, who is this chick? So this is the mandatory about me slide where I talk about myself because you're supposed to do that. And this is me where I have brushed my hair. So I'm the CEO and founder at We Hack Purple. I actually don't work at Bright anymore, and I need to update this slide and totally forgot. I do We Hack Purple full time. I'm known as She Hacks Purple, and in this picture, I have purple hair, but right now I have red hair just to be different. I wrote a book called Alice and Bob Learn Application Security. I've been a nerd a very long period of time, but the key takeaway here is that I'm a nerd at large on the internet, and I talk mostly and only about how to secure software because that's my own obsession. And so if you want to ask a question in the chat, you just put it on in there and I should be able to see it. You can say, this question's for the end, but I want to put it in now so I don't forget to ask. Or you could just say, like, putting a question about whatever I'm talking about at that moment, and then I can answer it at the time. If I see it and I'm like, oh, I'm going to finish this first, like, just wait, I'm going to get to it. Okay, so what the heck is DevOps? So you're at the Denver DevOps meetup. So I'm going to assume that most of you are like, I know DevOps. I got this. So I'm going to go pretty quickly over these two slides because I don't want anyone to feel insulted. But basically, DevOps is a way more modern way to build software. And it has three ways of DevOps. The first way is that we want to ensure the efficiency of the entire system. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, not just my part. So we want to make the whole thing quite efficient and fast. Then the next part is getting fast feedback. And I add to this in my head, like secretly you say extra words to yourself. And so fast feedback to the right person that is accurate feedback. Sending tons of false positives, not helpful. Getting tons and tons of feedback and having it all go into the super secure system that no one has an account so they can't sign in and see it, not helpful. And then the third way of DevOps, a lot of people call it different things. So there's people that say continuous learning, and other people say risk-taking and experimentation. But I like to think of it as taking time to improve my daily work. And sometimes I'm taking time to improve the daily work of the software developers that I work with. And that's me dedicating some time to make sure all of them can do things more efficiently. And so a lot of people kind of like have different kind of definitions of the third way, but that's okay. And so a lot of DevOps focuses around something called a CI/CD, which stands for continuous integration, continuous delivery, and or continuous deployment. And super briefly, continuous integration means testing that all those parts work together and doing those tests all the time, because integration points are often breaking points. Continuous delivery is getting an automated system that does that for you. That's what the CI/CD is, and that is a lot of the magic of DevOps. And quite frankly, I love CI/CDs a lot. And then continuous deployment is where you use your CI/CD. You have so many tests and you are so confident about it that when people push code, it automatically runs and it automatically releases out into prod. And quite frankly, the internet, the public. And so not every company does continuous delivery. You absolutely don't have to. There's only a small percentage of companies that do that with absolutely no stops or manual approvals. But it is a thing that some of us hope for. I used to do it when I was in an open source project and no one gave a crap about my app. But if I was working at a huge company where we made tons of money, that might be bad. Also, my face was just frozen in the absolute most awkward facial expression ever. I apologize for my suddenly flaky internet. Okay, so why would we want CI/CD? So some people call this trunk-based development. But basically, if we integrate our stuff together all the time, we make sure it works and we make sure there's less risk. If we check more often, it's smaller changes and it's easier to fix. I'm sure all of you have met a dev, a junior dev, where they just disappear and they're suspiciously quiet for a few weeks. And one day I'm like, you haven't checked any code in 8 weeks, buddy. Oh, well, I've been building this feature. Oh, if you didn't check in any of your work for that time, then we try to integrate and it's like, ah! And so if we check more often that things work, life is better and there's less risk. And as a security person, we want that. Then there's automation. So this is speed and accuracy. I don't know about you, but I'm a human and humans make mistakes. I am one of those humans that makes mistakes. And when I automate things, I make fewer mistakes. And it means that if Tanya's having a really bad day, the thing still gets done. So that's good. And the last thing about CI/CD, so there's more things that are cool. There's more things that are cool about CI/CD, but the last thing on this slide, because I think you all already know this, is that there's just less errors. There's less mess ups, there's less screw ups, there's less, oh, I meant to do that before I left work for the day, but then I got a phone call and I forgot. And then I didn't remember until it was Sunday, sorry guys. So CI/CD, it's pretty much made out of win. And so what is application security? Besides the thing Tanya's obsessed with. It's every and anything that you do to ensure the software that is at your organization is secure. And I'm quoting myself, which sounds very silly, but for some reason people listen more if there's a quote, and no one would say that for me. But basically, whatever you're doing to make sure your software is more secure, and that could mean all of you sign up and take secure coding. It could mean you got this cool tool that checks to see if your dependencies have any security vulnerabilities, and then you decide whether you want to use it or not and take that risk. It could be listening to a podcast and hearing about a new vulnerability and then going in and playing around and realizing, oh no, we have that. Anything that you're doing to try to make your software more secure is part of AppSec. An AppSec program is where it's formal and you have a plan and you follow the plan, and hopefully everyone else is following the plan too. But every little effort that you do is fighting the good fight. And so then what is DevSecOps? And it's funny because the person I have the meeting with right after this is the person who I'm quoting, and his name's Imran, and he's just totally awesome. So basically I was talking with my friend Imran, and he said, Tanya, it's what we've always wanted. It's what we've always done. You and we want to make software that's more secure, but we're working at a DevOps shop. So we just need to adjust a bit. That's it, which makes it sound really easy. And he teaches DevSecOps, so he knows what he's talking about. But basically, us security folks need to change if we want to work well with the DevOps folks. And we do want to, because otherwise our lives are very bad if we don't work well within the processes that the dev and the ops folks are doing. And so we already covered these, and you're all probably experts. You're probably like, I know this. Normally I would repeat it, but because this is a DevOps meetup, I don't want anyone to feel patronized. But basically, these are the things that us security folks, we need to obey these rules too when we do security. If you're working in sprints, we got to learn to get some of our work done in sprints. It's just we can't expect the world to change around us when there's somewhere between 100 and 500 developers for every AppSec person. It's us that's got to change. We can't change all of you. And so you're probably thinking, Tanya, but what about pipelines? So pipelines are definitely part of the first and second way of DevOps, and it can be part of the third way too. But if you put every single thing in the pipeline, software developers will not want to be your friends anymore. I have a friend and he got a job at a very big company that I won't name, but all of you know the name of this very big, amazing, successful company. And when he got there, they had 11 security scanning tools in their pipeline. 11. That took a long time to run. And he's like, I got there and I was not popular. And so he spent the next year and a half slowly taking some of them out and like tuning and improving, etc. And he changed it so security could get done way, way, way quicker, like a fraction of the time. And they were getting things out way faster. The developers were happier, but most importantly, they were more secure. And so we don't want, vendors will tell us, and I've worked for a vendor before, they're like, yeah, you just put in, it'll take 2 seconds. There's no effort at all. I'm sorry, but that's not the truth. We need to tune things and take time if we're going to put them in the pipeline. And if we don't have time for that, that's okay. The tool is still awesome, but we use it outside the pipeline, what it's good at. Some tools are awesome in a pipeline and some tools are not awesome in a pipeline. Doesn't mean it's not an awesome tool, but you got to use it the way it's used best. So let's look at possibilities. Oh, that was my attempt at animation. Anyway, okay, so an application security program goals. So these are some of the goals that you might set for an application security program that you're running. And we're going to talk about how you can approach some of these without messing with the beautiful, beautiful CI/CD pipeline that the dev and ops folks have worked so hard on. Oh my gosh, Tanya, stop with the silly animations. Okay, so inventory. So the first thing I like to do when I get to a new organization is inventory. Do we have a list of all of our apps? Do you, it's 8 p.m. Do you know where your APIs are? And so I want to know where all the things are that I'm supposed to protect, because if I don't know where they are, I can't protect them. If I don't even know that I have them, how am I going to protect them? So it's really, really important. So what can we do? So we don't need a CI/CD whatsoever to do inventory. I guess you could look to see how many pipelines you have and see okay, those might be, it could be one of the many, many steps of your process, but you don't need to put anything into it to see. So internet domain scraping, which is it's not a sexy topic, but that works. You can just find a whole bunch of apps that you have. You can do, put network agents on servers and track your assets that way. And then anything that has port 80 or hopefully port 443 open instead, there's probably a web app living there because that is HTTPS. And hopefully you don't have too many port 80s open to the public, but I digress. So then there's Nmap. So Nmap is a free tool where you can scan your network, and basically it's really easy, assuming you don't have a zillion firewalls. So different sections of your network, if you do zoning, you can bring it in and run Nmap and just look, is port 80 or port 443 open, or 8080 if you're being weird. And so look for all those things. All those things are web servers, or a container. There's probably an app or an API living there. And yeah, just to be more explicit. So if you have a cloud provider, anything that's PaaS, platform as a service, any infrastructure as a service, code repo scraping, basically if you don't know about something, it's probably not in the CI/CD pipeline. Oh good, I'm unfrozen. Sorry about that. Okay, so finding bugs. So that is a thing that a lot of AppSec teams focus on. They just want to find, are there critical bugs out there, or high critical, I'll have critical, high, low, medium. I don't want there to be criticals in prod. I don't want there to be highs in prod. And if I can push the limits, I don't want there to be mediums either. And so I want to find bugs in written code, running code, third-party code. And there are ways. There's kind of the old way, which would be to stick 100 things in your CI/CD. and just run old tools, but there's like newer ways. So you could do things like you could test your code in real time. So there's new application security tools. One is called IAST, which is interactive application security testing, and it's a binary, and you put it inside your app and then it tests as you use it. And so there's no CI/CD required. There's lots of third-party components that you could scan in the pipeline, but you could also, way better, scan it when people check their code in, and then scan your repo every week. Just because you have a CI/CD doesn't mean it's been run in the past 6 months. And code dependencies age not like wine. They age a bit more like cheese in the sun. So if we want to ensure we stay away from accruing a ton of technical debt, and we want to stay away from having really vulnerable dependencies, we could just scan the entire code repo every single week. And then also when people check in code, and you could do better and kind of start security earlier than if you wait until the CI/CD runs. You could do dynamic application security testing and do it on an automated schedule. So I see this a lot more than I see DAST in the CI/CD. Like way more often. I see it outside the CD, but on automated regular schedules where the reports come in via email and someone like me looks at them and we're like, does this scare me? How much does it scare me? So another goal, so this might seem like a weird goal to have knowledge, but a goal of the security program is often to have the software developers have the knowledge to fix the bugs that they've found. Because if I'm sending a bug report to you and you read it and you're an Anglophone, so English is your first language, you're like, this looks like Greek. I don't understand this at all. And assuming you don't speak Greek. So insert a language you don't know. But if you read the report and none of it makes sense to you, you're not going to know how to fix those bugs. And if you don't know where to go to find the answers, and especially if you have like a not great relationship with the security team members, like that's also problematic. And so having the knowledge to fix the bugs that you've found is a goal that a lot of AppSec teams have. And they might not word it that way, but that's okay. And so this is like the third way of DevOps. It's continuous learning. And so we could do something like use a vulnerability management tool. And so a vulnerability management tool sucks up the results of all the different reports from all the different security tools, and it tells you, you guys stink at this. So it'll tell you like, you have injection everywhere, or you have a lot of cross-site scripting, like you're doing it on purpose. And then what you can do is see what trends and patterns that you have at your organization, and then you can teach about those things so you can start preventing them. You could also start security champions programs so that you could scale this education effort so that everyone feels like they have more knowledge. And so it's one thing to train people, but it's another thing where they feel confident that, you know what, I can fix this bug. I know how to figure this out. I know who to ask if I'm stuck. I know where to look for the answers. I'm ready. And you don't need a pipeline to do this. You could still do an awesome job of this and never bother using a CI/CD. So education, and by this I mean developer education. So this is a thing that a lot of us do too. So not just that they have knowledge, they know who to ask, but sometimes you want to teach them things. So it's not, I know how to go find the answer eventually. It's that I know every time I must do this, or the security team's going to send me a frowny face on my report. And so a developer education program, it often means like providing regular education on topics relevant to where you work, and materials, reference materials to help them about security. So this could be specifically, oh, it looks like you're mute. Oh, just a second. It does not say I'm muted. Could someone else put in the chat to see if I'm muted? If you cannot hear me anymore? We can still hear you.
Yeah,
so person that,
great.
Okay, so the other person who put the direct message, are you okay? Okay, if everyone else can hear me, I'm sorry to the person with the message. You might want to disconnect and reconnect in. Yeah, I've got 4 people confirm they can hear me. Thank you, everyone. That's awesome. Okay, So the next thing would be an advocacy program, and an advocacy program is different than the developer education. The idea is that you're trying to change the culture of the place where you work. So people care more about security, they take it more seriously. And I don't mean they run around and yell at people if they hold a door for someone, but where people, where it's a priority. And that is a thing that is a huge effort to try to change the way people think about something. And I remember when I went to work at Microsoft, people took security seriously, and it was such a pleasure. Like when you're a security person and you work at places where people have a lot of apathy, or they're like, oh, I have 10,000 things, I'm drowning, I can't add another thing. Or they're like, the last security person just said no all the time, so we're gonna assume Tanya's a meanie too. And so when you can have a positive security culture, it makes every day way better. Another thing which I already talked about, and I talk about a lot, is security champions programs. I'm pretty excited about those, and that's like a way for the security team to sort of form a sub team of software developers where you have one person from each team and you super train them up and you teach them how to use the tools and wield them like ninjas. And you just like, so they're sort of the security rep on each team and they handle as much as they can. And then you swoop in and help them if they're stuck. And it is when we're 500 to 1, according to GitHub. Yeah, this is a way to scale. Lunch and learns, having time reserved for learning every week. Like there's a lot of different ways that we can provide developer education. And none of it needs a CI/CD pipeline, but you're still in a DevOps environment. If anything, you doing all this teaching is you part of the third way of DevOps and fully supporting that. So the next one is giving developers security tools. So I've always been a big fan. So when I was a dev, I'm like, well, I want to play with it. Give that to me. I didn't want to wait for some silly security person to have time to scan me next week. I'm like, just give it to me now. I'll do it myself. Because I am a control freak, and that's okay. But you can actually like give software developers training and hopefully a safe place to do things if the tool is potentially destructive. But I have successfully given DASTs and SASTs before to software developers and no one got hurt. So if you have normal unit tests, you can change some of them so they become negative unit tests. So putting, bad stuff in and making sure your application fails gracefully, right? And that's a type of security testing. And that's a thing that developers are the boss of. You can give them tools that scan their code repo and, they can like call the thing and be like, scan, give me the results. And they can be the boss of it. You can have IDE tools like that plug directly into your IDE where you program all day. You can have, so I put IDE tools, but then I was thinking of the code repo, like you can have a pre-commit hook where, so a thing I like to scan for is, oh, is that a password in your code? Please don't put that there. And so you can have a pre-commit hook on your code repo. So there's software composition analysis that checks your third-party dependencies, but basically like security people are always like shift security left, push security left. And by that, they mean try to start the security processes as early as you can in the system development lifecycle. And like these things are before the CI/CD. And so again, it's good. You're still getting good security work done. You're working well with the other teams, but you don't need a CI/CD. You like for this, just to be clear, I love CI/CD, but I'm trying really hard to show you there's many different ways you can still do good security work in a DevOps environment and not crowd down that pipeline. Okay, a secure system development lifecycle. So I talk about this a lot. I think this is very important to organizations. And so this is the ideal. If you can put one or more security activities in each phase of the system development lifecycle. So even though you're doing DevOps, there's still requirements gathering at some point. And I'd like to add some security requirements. Oh, you're making an API that will be like, open to the public internet. Cool. I would really like that to be behind a gateway, an API gateway. And I would like you to set up these settings on it to, to throttle if this is happening, or to have resource quotas, or whatever thing that is the security requirement. And so if each phase of the SDLC, we can do some sort of security support, then you have this, like, you will build way more secure, way more secure apps than if you have no support till the end. And then a penetration tester comes in who's some consultant that doesn't even know your app. And they're like, boom, 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 tons of stuff is wrong. This sucks. I gotta go. I know that I sound really biased, but I was a dev a lot longer than I was a pen tester. And that was my experience of them just telling me I suck. And I was like, oh, I did not enjoy that part. Here we go. Yes. Okay. So tools. So you can put tons of tools outside the pipeline and they can still be awesome. So a goal sometimes, so I do some consulting for AppSec. Even though I run my own company because I'm a sucker. But anyway, a lot of us are like, we want to have a certain tool set enabled and like have it rolled out and deployed really well so that we can give a complete picture of the security posture to the C-level executives. So it's like, yes, I've scanned every single app with these 2 types of tools. And after analysis, I see these trends and this is why we're going better. And so having good and effective tooling that has good coverage, that gives you accurate results, good coverage, valuable feedback. That's a big goal for a lot of AppSec programs. That's important, specifically and especially so that you can show management that you're doing a good job, but also so that you just know what the heck's going on. When you arrive at a company and there's 100, 200, 300 apps and you're supposed to try to secure them, if you haven't even had a scan, if they don't have a secure system development lifecycle, like getting some basic tooling out right away is very important. It's usually prioritized right near the top. And so not all tools should go in the pipeline. So if there's lots of false positives and you're breaking builds for no reasons, that's not cool. If it runs for 6 or 10 or 12 hours, that's not cool. Sometimes, vendors will often call it continuous scanning, continuous security. But they don't mean that it's actually scanning every minute of every day, because that would be stupid. But for instance, like I was working somewhere like a year and a half ago, and we set up their dynamic scanner to scan 2 apps every night. And each day of the month was a different app or different apps. And then they would scan every single one of all of their apps every single month, and they'd have a report. And then we were automating it so that we would get like this analysis and trends and blah, blah, blah. And the point of that is so you have an accurate picture how things are changing for the better, for the worse, etc. And so you can do DNS-based scanning, agent-based scanning, code repo scans. And yes, you could scan in the pipeline too, but a lot of security tools aren't nice and fast like dev tools. A lot of them aren't. And a vendor will tell you like, it's lightning fast, and then it's 6 hours. Or it's lightning fast if you turn off 95% of the tests and you only test a really small section of your app. And like, that's nice because maybe this is the new part that you're really worried about and you're just worried about certain things. That's cool if that's what you're doing, but you still have to do a full scan outside the pipeline. I still need to know what's going on with the whole app, not just the little new part you did. And so, sometimes when people put something in the chat, it like takes my focus from my mouse from PowerPoint to Zoom, which is totally fine. But if you hear, oh, that's what the sound is. And another thing you can do, which is a pipeline, but I don't care, is that you can make another CI/CD pipeline because it's just software, right? It's just more software. So you make another pipeline and you copy the first one, but you don't deploy it. Or you do deploy it, but it's to a safe place where security are allowed to test. And so you could have like I did this before for a workshop where basically I spin up a container in GitHub Actions, I deploy the app to it, and then I run this huge long DAST scan, a huge long SAST scan, so static and dynamic analysis. I do the 4 seconds software composition analysis test. I do a little secret scan just to be clear. And then I kill the container, it self-destructs, releases all the resources, and then it gives me the report. And I do that in a separate pipeline that does not release out anywhere important. And it kicks off whenever there's a major version change. And so then I get to have these long, slow tests run. But the other CI/CD that they did, the release pipeline, it's still going, it's done. It's done like a million years before mine, but I don't care because I just want an email with the test results so I can talk to them later. I have my emergency checks. I've done all this other security outside the pipeline. I feel confident they're going to be pretty darn good when they get out there, but I want to do deep analysis on this new version and talk to them about it later. And it's a compromise from the security team to do it that way, but then you can meet your deadlines. Okay, incident response. And so a thing I want is a trained incident response team that understands software. Most incident response teams, they know nothing about software. So there'll be an incident with one of your custom pieces of software, or there'll be APIs falling down all the time, and they're just like, I don't know what to do. I'm not a dev. An incident response team that understands, even just to call the AppSec team like, oh, this is AppSec. Like I'll have them call me 3 weeks into the incident. I'm just like, guys, why didn't you call me 3 weeks ago? Well, we thought we would figure it out. I'm like, guys, I sit right over there. Anyway, so this does not require a pipeline, but it's still extremely valuable. So having a security incident response team. So I start with creating the process and then telling people about it. I worked somewhere once and my predecessor had a great process. No one knew about it. It was a complete secret. So incidents would happen. No one would follow it because no one knew it existed. Give access to your inventory doc. So you want that incident response team to know where all your apps are and who to talk to about which one. We want to have access to the code repository, just read only. But if it's the middle of the night and I'm trying to see like, are we vulnerable to this giant vulnerability that's currently being exploited in the wild? I know that we have this framework, but I don't know if we have the version or the way that we've implemented it, if we're actually vulnerable and exploitable. And so I want to whip up a server and run it. And I can't do that if I don't have a copy of your code. Access to tools, blameless postmortem. I talk about this a lot, blameless postmortem. So something's wrong, but it's not Alice's fault. It's not Bob's fault. It's a policy that's broken or that didn't work right. It's a safeguard that was missing or implemented incorrectly. I sell training, so bias alert, but I think training once a year is really important. If it's been more than a year, it's very possible that you could forget. So a bonus to this would be so like, it can't stop, right? I always want more. But a bonus to having a good incident response team that understands software incidents would be having tools that can prevent or detect application security incidents as they happen. So this could be homemade, you could buy one, but if you provide job specific security training to all of IT, so I'm supposed to be making a new course for We Have Purple where I teach this, but we'll see. But basically like what software developers need to know, like that is a security incident. This is what they look like. Please call me so I can come and help you. Don't touch anything. It sounds silly, but once you talk about it a few times, suddenly people start reporting security incidents to you all the time because they're happening. And it takes the security team longer to see it than the subject matter experts who work in it every day. And so that amount of time could be the difference between a data breach or not a breach. It could be the difference between, your website falling down versus your website being just like not quite awesome for a few minutes. So anyway, I digress. I get off topic. I'm sorry. Metrics. So another thing I love is data. And so if we want to aim to continuously improve our program based on metrics, experimentation, and feedback from all stakeholders, because feedback's important and that's a huge part of DevOps. And you can do tons of this without a CI/CD. It is easier with a CI/CD though. I'll give you that. It's easier with a CI/CD. So every 3 months, you could look at all the input from your tools. And if you have a vulnerability management system, you just press a button and it'll show you a report. And then you could teach about those things. You could experiment to find better ways to reach the specific goals that you have for your security program. I know that most of you are DevOps folks, but I bet you could use these metrics so that you could do your jobs better. You could do a proof of concept of new tools and new approaches on just one project instead of all of them. If you have metrics, you just do it on one project, you measure, you see if it's working or not, and then you decide if you want to deploy it everywhere else. You could visit other application security shops to learn from them. So when I worked in the government, we would sometimes travel to other governments or other departments to see how they did things. I worked at elections, and our chief election person, like, he would travel to all these different countries to see how their elections go for democratic countries. And either we would share our software and our tools and our systems, or they would share with us. And why recreate the wheel if someone else is willing to give you one? And so, and you can follow some people on social media if you want to learn more about metrics. You can sit on conference talks like this one. I'm pretty obsessed specifically with metrics, and I have like a talk all about it because I'm pretty excited. But a thing that I want to say, so the last thing about metrics is, and so this might not sound like it even relates to metrics, but forming relationships with other areas of IT and other areas of the business so that you get things done better. It sounds weird, but then you can measure that. Because I remember having a boss saying, you talk too much. You always go over and talk to all these people, and people are always coming to your desk and talking to you. How do you get any work done? And I'm like, well, if you look at our chart, I actually get more work done than the other two team leads. It's because I have cooperation with so many other teams. And it's because I talk to them. And also sometimes I bribe people with cookies. Just gonna be honest, cookies can get you pretty far in an IT shop, and pizza, any sort of carb, especially if there's sugar with it. But anyway, but then I could show my boss with metrics, actually, I'm not talking too much and wasting time. Like, I had like 30% more productivity than the other two devs or dev leads. I was like, aha. And so I want to summarize a bit. Ooh, chocolate chip. So to summarize, like, super briefly, so application security program goals, not all of them need a CI/CD pipeline. We don't have to sit there and put 57 tools in your pipeline to feel like we're doing a good job of security. I think we should do it sparingly. We should do it when we need to, but if there's a good way to still get the results quickly and reasonably and have good, accurate results outside the CI/CD pipeline, we should often take that choice, even though it's cool to use the CI/CD. The first time I did a project with a CI/CD, I put 9 tools in it because I was so pumped. And then I learned this lesson the hard way when the rest of the open source project people were like, come on, Tanya. AppSec is not about a specific tool you buy. It's not about one tactic. It's about, and every single organization is different. And quite often people are like, what's the first move you do when you get to a company? I'm like, I talk to people and ask a lot of questions and listen a lot. Because some companies have completely different problems than other companies, or maybe it's a nonprofit or a governmental organization and they have a completely different focus. Like when I worked at elections, guess what their number one thing they were concerned about? It was the election, one great big event every 4 years. But other governmental departments or private companies, like they're like, one event every 4 years, what are you guys doing? And so you have to, it's not about one specific way that's right or wrong. It's about finding the absolute best things that work for your org. And DevOps is not just about pipelines. There's so much more to it. And a lot of companies are like, yeah, we do a bit of DevOps. We have a CI/CD pipeline, but then they're doing waterfall. They're doing a waterfall with a pipeline. And that's okay, but it's not DevOps, and you're not getting as much awesome as you could be. And so now I have some resources. And so the first set of resources are books about DevOps. Surprise! The DevOps Handbook, the Phoenix Project, Accelerate, the Unicorn Project. And then I'm extremely biased, but my book, Allison Bobler and Application Security, in my opinion, it's the best book, and my mom agrees. And so it's not only about DevOps. There's a part about DevOps, but it's more about how to create secure software, no matter what methodology you're using. But I like all of these books and highly recommend them, especially for people that aren't necessarily super technical. The Unicorn Project and the Phoenix Project can really help them understand where all of us are coming from and why people sometimes call me Brett. I have a podcast. So we are currently doing season 3, and it's just me and people that I know that are super excited about AppSec, and we just have a conversation about it. So I had my friend Sharif on a little while ago, and we talked about like how he built a next generation static application security testing tool and like the deep inside like gears of how that works. Then I had someone else come on and we talked about, why you would want to use a first generation SaaS sometimes, and why you absolutely need one of those versus why sometimes you would want to use a second generation SaaS, and like how different situations really demand different tools. And it's just conversations with nerds about how to create more secure software. Our most recent episodes with this guy named Nick Douglas, and he is so funny. I thought I was gonna cry. I was laughing so hard. Anyway, I'm biased, but I think it's very fun. I have an online community called We Hack Purple Community, and it's free. And we have a bunch of free courses in it about how to secure software, incident response, infrastructure as code, secure coding, application secure, we have a whole bunch. And so the community is free. The courses inside the community are free. And we have like online events, and we're fun. In my extremely biased opinion, it's my favorite place on the internet. Every single Monday on Twitter and on Mastodon now, because Twitter is weird now. So on Twitter and on Mastodon, every Monday, I use this hashtag to try to help people find professional mentors. And so hashtag Cyber Mentoring Monday, it's been since 2018. And some Mondays, there's just like 1 or 2 matches, and that's okay. But other Mondays, there's 20, 30, 40 matches. And over the years, I've been told endless wonderful stories of what's happened when people meet. And so if you are interested in giving back to the community, to the industry, and taking someone under your wing, awesome. If you are considering moving into security, this is a great way for you to meet people, to get recommendations, and potentially, if you're lucky, find a lifelong friend. I've met amazing human beings using this hashtag. And I am the last resource, me. I am a nerd, I have a blog, I do silly videos on TikTok now. And that works for me, and that's okay. Anyway, so I like this stuff. I'm really into it. And if you follow me, there'll be a lot more stuff just like this, like blog articles, videos, etc. And there'll be a fair amount of giggles because that's just my jam. And so with that, I am Tanya Janca, and I really want to thank you for having me. I want to thank the Denver DevOps meetup and all you wonderful humans that came here. Thanks. Do we have any questions? Oh, thank you, Avi. Drew, you are on mute, in case you want to not be on mute.
Oh man, hands are being raised.
Okay, good.
Oh, hands are going back down. Oh, maybe that was applause.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, definitely. If there's questions, like unmute and fire away. I think we've got Tanya for another few minutes.
We do, and questions are sort of my favorite part. It sounds weird, but someone asks a question, I'm like, I never thought of it like that.
I'll give it an awkward count of 5. I got one to start if no one's got one.
Well, maybe you should start.
I'll give it a count of 3. Okay, so I scribbled a note at the beginning. You were saying that how like security's got to change to adapt to developers because they're basically outnumbered. Something like arbitrary 500 to 1. Like it sounds like you've worked with mostly what I would generously call enlightened security professionals. So how do you handle the ones that aren't so like eager to make those changes?
I have to say that the hardest part of switching from being a software developer to doing AppSec is dealing with all the security professionals that just say no all the time. And I'm on the security team, and then I'm battling them. I started working somewhere quite a while ago. And I remember the first week I got, the security person was like, wow, the developer just told me to F off in an email and CC'd their boss. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so inappropriate. And then I read the thread and I'm like, I would have told you to F off too. You're so out of line. You're such not okay. And like this, the story started simply enough. The security person's like, hey, yeah, I want you to use a XAML token to do that. This guy did that in this project. And then the guy wrote back, no, we didn't use XAML for our session token. Like, we used this other thing. And he's like, no, you did. I'm like, you're telling the guy that built it what he built it with? You're telling him? And he just kept doing it. And then he CC'd the client. The security person was like, yeah, he knows how to do it. He's just being stubborn for some reason and pretending he doesn't know. I'm like, so then you call, then he CC'd his boss. And then eventually the developer used the F word. And I was like, yep, I see. And he's like, do you see the problem? I'm like, I do. And so I ended up having to battle that security team quite a bit. And sadly, I ended up resigning in protest because they wouldn't let me do anything except incident response because everything was on fire. And I was like, you won't let me get my job done. And it's management. It's not that. So then the devs and I started having secret meetings because they didn't want us to talk. And they're like, it's like you're one of them, Tanya. And I was like, yeah. I see a hand up from someone who just has a P. Oh, Peter.
Yes, this is Pete. So can you share a horror story of how you learned through pain that you went forward with? And can you share some of your good thoughts of going forward with security?
Okay, so I have some examples. So one example might sound really weird, but a problem I saw over and over again was security professionals that would say no, and then they would blame the software developer. So this was like the first time I had it wasn't a pen test. Basically, I was a dev, it was a long time ago, and they're like, we bought a VA scanner and we scanned your app and it says, this stuff's wrong, fix it, or you can't go to prod. And I'm like, I'm supposed to go to prod like tomorrow, buddy. And so I looked up the stuff, and this was long enough ago that I had to do a lot of searches to figure out what the heck this even meant. And so I managed to fix that. And then they ran the VA scanner again. And this was the world's stupidest piece of crap tool where it had lots of tests, but you had to page time you ran it and would only run certain tests each time. I don't know why anyone would buy such a, anyway, whatever. It doesn't exist anymore for obvious reasons. And so then it found other things. And so then I passed with the third time, and I'd asked for help, and I was like, hey, like what's wrong? Like I need help. I don't know what to do. And he said, if you were a good dev, you would know. And I was like, but I don't know. And he just made me feel really bad. And that made me feel kind of insecure. And then when I gave him the thing and I finally passed, I'm like, wow, that was so hard. He's like, if you're a good dev, there would never been those bugs in the first place. Yeah. Then I became a pen tester like 2 years later, and I understood that dude knew literally nothing. He knew nothing about apps. He knew nothing about security. He barely knew how to press the scan button. And so he was taking his insecurity and throwing it at me. And so then I started seeing this over and over and over and over again in meetings where I was like, oh, where did this policy come from? Why? Did you see that NIST has changed this 5 years ago? Did you see this and this? And I started just using like data and evidence. And people sometimes get ticked at me, but I'm just like, no, I'm not going to make them have a password with 23 different symbols in it and make them change it every 3 months, because then it's just going to be written on a Post-it note on their monitor. And instead we're going to do things in the newer way that actually works. And yeah, I know it sounds bad, but I've seen people switch over though. So I gave a talk about that, about how people feel insecure in their job and then they act out in certain ways. And then security and the dev shop go like this, because when you don't know, you can either admit and be vulnerable, or you can't because you don't have psychological safety where you work. And that is common. And Gene Kim talks about that a lot. I think he's a really great author. I'm a giant fan of Gene. And so I did a talk about this, and this guy got up in question period and he was like, blah, 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 they got it, blah, blah. And he was like basically saying all the things that I'd said don't work and cause insecurity in other teams. And eventually I said, sir, I'm on stage because everyone here came to see me talk, not you. You sit down because you're done. And then I did more questions. And the next day I was at the conference still, and I was I was having a beer, which I like never do, with one of my professional mentors because he was having a beer. So I'm like, when in Rome. And the guy came up to me and he's like, I owe you a beer and an apology. I was up the whole night because that was me. I'm the guy that says no. And I realized how wrong I was. And I felt really angry. And I felt angry at you. And then I talked to my wife about it. And then at the end, I was like, I owe that lady a big sorry. And he ended up giving me this huge bear hug. And he was like, I'm going to change. And I was like, this was worth it. It was so great. And so I am seeing people change. And part of it means sometimes we have to be vulnerable. And it's hard and weird at work. Thanks, Drew, for the best question. Or Peter.
Yes, but what is the best path to go forward to being a better DevSec person? Is there a good path or a good note to say how you can go forward with?
I understand there's a really good book on the topic.
So I'm biased, but I think my book's great. However, I would say that just if you can admit when you don't know, that's magic. The first security person I met where I was like, maybe I want to be a security person was this woman named Alicia. And she would just say, you know what? I don't know. That's okay though, because we're going to find out. And then she'd book a meeting with me and we would figure it out together. Or she would find the right person. And then eventually, like, she never gave up on me. And she was just so determined and really awesome. And then I was like, maybe one day I could grow up and be like her. And I like to think that I am. She's awesome. She does so many cool things, but she does threat hunting, not AppSec. Anyway, I'm so sorry that I have another meeting I have to go to with Imran from my talk earlier. And it's really hard to make appointments with people who live literally the opposite side of the world from you. Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much, Tanya.
Will you send me a link when this is done so I could share it with my community?
Absolutely.
Thank you.